Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Jesse Garcia, the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, and Erik Levin, noted attorney, commentator, political essayist. Gentlemen, it's good to be with you again. Jesse, this has been a sad day for law enforcement and for our men and women in blue, and also, frankly, for public safety, not just in New York City, but throughout the state and across the country. What are your thoughts, Jesse?
My thoughts are it is a very sad day because earlier this week, a hero of New York was tragically and taken from us. You know, New York City police officer Jonathan Diller, who's from Massapequa. At a normal traffic stop, he got into a tussle with two people who did not want to comply with the law enforcement. We saw a body cam of him actually being shot and still struggling to disarm the alleged assailant. He died subsequently of his wounds later that night on Monday night. And my heart bleeds and is hurt for all members of law enforcement because I think we've said this on numerous occasions. This alleged assailant has had anywhere between 18 and 21 other arrests, and he was still on the streets. But what's happening here is, you know, as I said, we back the blue and we respect our law enforcement. We support our law enforcement. We're not like those progressives that want to defund our police and actually go after our police. But on that tragic Monday night, not only was a hero taken of us from the New York Police Department, but two innocent people were stabbed in the subways. Another innocent bystander was pushed in front of a train.
And was killed.
I think and we were killed. I am angry. Where is the governor? Where is Mayor Adams? Where are the leaders of the Assembly and the State Senate that have given us and imposed upon us these laws that reward criminals and tie the hands of cops, prosecutors, and judges? Just a week earlier, we saw the migrant crisis personified. Angry migrants tearing down the fence at the border, overcoming border officers. Where is Biden? Where are our elected officials to stand up for law-abiding citizens? Their first order of business, their first order under their oath is the protection of their citizens. These individuals and their progressive socialist partners have failed. They failed miserably, and now their failure comes in blood on a regular basis. This is the same governor and mayor who said, we're going to put 800 more police officers in the subways. We're going to bring the National Guard there. It's not working. When you go after the police, when you disrespect the police, when you put their personal data on the street like they did 2 years ago, when you do issues like cashless bail, this is the anarchy you get. And you know what? I'm glad that we've woken up. And I'm going to take a little bit of pride here that the people of Suffolk County and the people of Nassau County have woken up to stop elected officials, bad elected officials like this, and turn this region red. But now it's time for the rest of New York. It's time for New York City to take back their streets. They have to wake up. They failed themselves when they did not vote for Lee Zeldin and law and order in 2022. And this is what we're getting.
You know, Ed Koch famously said when he lost in his fourth race for mayor of New York City, the people have spoken and now they must be punished. And that was a joke, but it really captures the essence of this. And you're absolutely right, Jesse. You have a situation that's totally out of control. It is not getting better. It can only get worse. It has a momentum of public safety going downhill and going south on a regular basis. We're no longer surprised when we find out people walking down the streets slashing or punching people in the face, randomly, stranger attack. We're no longer surprised if somebody gets pushed in front of a subway car and is destroyed. We're no longer surprised that punks with long records are out on the street and they're taking the lives and threatening the safety of good men and women in blue. We're no longer surprised, and we should be shocked, outraged, and you're correct, we should be doing something about it. And just when you think maybe, Jesse, just maybe the people in the state legislature would get a sense of reality, the Speaker of the Assembly, Cole Hasty, gets up and says, putting people in jail is not the answer. With all due respect, Mr. Hasty, you don't know a thing about law enforcement and public safety. Putting people in jail, and when they need it, in mental institutions for the mentally ill who are a threat to themselves and others, is exactly what you have to do. So all due respect to the Speaker of the State Assembly and his colleague, Senator Stuart Cousins, the time now is to scrap all these so-called reforms which have totally disrupted the criminal justice system, made the system in favor of the victimizers rather than the victims. What do you say, Erik?
So I think this is what we've discussed this in the past, but this is what happens when you have a single-party state. You don't really, when you get to the general elections, the election has already been decided before. So in New York City is the prime example. Republicans have no shot of winning a citywide election. And if you look at the city council, it is just filled literally with Marxists and communists who are pro-criminal. They are pro-criminal. And then you have a district attorney like Alvin Bragg, who is also pro-criminal, who doesn't have to worry about winning a general election. He just has to worry about winning the Democratic primary. And who shows up to vote in Democratic primaries? The most active Democrats, who tend to be the most motivated, who tend to be the most leftists, the progressives. Because if you look at the numbers of people who show up and vote in primaries, very few people show up. I think when Bill de Blasio won for mayor, in the primary he got something like roughly 23% of the entire New York City electorate ended up voting for Bill de Blasio. But he won in pretty substantial numbers in the primary. Same thing happens when you have Alvin Bragg or the city council members. Very small groups of people show up and vote in primaries, but they're the most motivated and they're the most extreme, and that's how we elect these people. And then you get to a statewide election. Because such a predominant number of people in New York State live in the 5 boroughs, basically the way the 5 boroughs go, the state goes. And in New York City, in 4 of the boroughs, the only exception being Staten Island, which tends to be a little more conservative, it's Republican, you have a very, very blue 4 boroughs. So they carry the state. That explains Hochul. She wants to win. And in order to win, she has to at least not offend the pro-criminal elements of her party. Paul Hasty. In the Senate and the legislature, it's the same thing. You have supermajority of Democrats in the Senate and the legislature. Why? Because all these people have to do generally is win a primary with very small numbers. It's why we really need a strong Republican Party. We need a 2-party state. We just don't have it right now. What complicates it is if you look at the number of people, if you look at the vote differential when Lee Zeldin lost to Kathy Hochul, he lost by fewer votes than the number of people who had left New York State within the last 5 years. Had everybody stayed, because those were predominantly Zeldin voters, more conservative voters, these are people fleeing the state.
Because they were fed up.
Because they're fed up with this nonsense. They're fed up with being beaten up on the subways, being taxed out of existence, being abused, being called names. And I don't mean being called names on the streets. I mean being called names by government officials, being called evil because you don't want to pay more taxes, being called evil because you want to have police on the streets and it's safe. It's crazy. So there's a reason why New York State leads the country in out-migration. It's because of policies like these. So unless and until we have a vibrant two-party state, this is just going to continue. At some point, the people of the state are just going to have to stand up and say, enough, we can't take this anymore. And unfortunately, I'm just not seeing it.
Well, let me make this point, and I'll get Jesse's comments to finish this topic. I believe if you look at California and if you look at New York, you're watching the death of the American dream. If there were ever two places in this country where people saw it as a land of opportunity, of golden vision, of a place where you could make a life, no matter how modest you began, and give a good life for your children and for your grandchildren, it was the state of New York, it was the state of California.
I would throw Illinois in there also.
Okay. Perhaps. I'll give you that. But I'm talking California and New York, to me, Jesse and Eric, really embodied the American dream. Now, what you have there, and Eric and Jesse have alluded to this, what you have is you have overtaxation, you have overregulation, you have over-litigation because businesses are constantly being sued and are being driven out of the state. So the people who are the job producers and the service providers and the product suppliers, they're leaving. The people who give to the charities and the cultural institutions, they are leaving because they're being overregulated, they're being overtaxed, and there's too much litigation that favors phony claims against business interests. You have this crime epidemic that Jesse started our conversation with. And all of this leads to a lack of confidence and diminished quality of life. This is a formula for disaster. And the out-migration numbers in New York State and in California are enormous. We're losing people we should not be losing. And who are we being
Where are they
replaced?
going?
Where are they going? They're going anywhere else but here.
Primarily Texas and Florida.
Yeah, and they're leaving. And what are we being rewarded with? We're having the place packed with illegal migrants who shouldn't be here in the first place.
And we're cutting 15% across the board on budgets, including law enforcement, because we can't afford to house and feed all the illegal aliens that are coming here. So in order to house and feed them, we're cutting we're cutting police, and we're cutting schools, and we're cutting quality of life across the board.
Jesse, final thoughts for this segment on this topic.
On this topic, I do support strongly the words and the direction from the Sergeants Benevolent Association President Vincent Vallalon, who basically told the members of the city council, because of your anti-police legislation and policies, don't be hypocritical and show up at any of these memorials for Officer Diller. And I agree with that, because if you're going to vote to give migrants, criminals, the tools they need to fight the justice system and handcuff the hands of cops, prosecutors, and judges, then you have no place there whatsoever. And, Judge, I just want to ask you one question. Of the three of us, you worked directly and counseled one of the most prominent Democratic leaders in the city council's history, Peter Vallone. How is it that he and others saw this issue and made sure they didn't go down this path, but yet these Marxists don't? When we're talking about a two-party system, when do the people of New York City, whether you be in the Bronx, in Manhattan, in Queens, Staten Island, or Brooklyn, and say, enough is enough? We can't give the same people the same power to make us unsafe. What is in the power of that the president of the city council can do?
The speaker of the council. We changed it.
The speaker of the council. Yes, I apologize.
The name makes all the difference.
Believe me, I'm personally responsible for that name change. It's one of the major things I've done in this life.
It's now called the Richard Chair.
All right. You know what the problem, Jesse, is you have two things. You have a changing demographic. So the more conservative people from their ethnic groups have left, and they're being replaced by people of different ethnic group with different persuasion. Plus, they don't remember the bad old days, Jesse. So the kids coming in here, take it for granted everything is fine, so they can vote left-wing and they vote progressive. They don't know the hard work and the dangers that we confronted to get the job done. When Peter Vallone...
The bad days are here.
The bad days...
The subway without being...
I just said...
With a knife or a gun.
Jesse, let me submit this to you. I lived through the bad old days when I was General Counsel, City Council, and Speaker Vallone led the council. But we had people we could work with in the City Council, in the mayor's office, in the state legislature, and in the governor's chair. Now we don't have that. There are no allies. So as smart and as wonderful Peter Vallone is, and as you gentlemen both know, I adore Peter. He's one of my closest friends, and I'm deeply grateful for the honor and privilege of having been his counsel. I am telling you, even a Peter Vallone today would have a problem with radical socialists who run as Democrats, but then lying. They're not Democrats in the traditional sense. They're not Jack Kennedy Democrats. They're not Hubert Humphrey Democrats. They're not Scoop Jackson Democrats.
The party's been hijacked.
The party, that's exactly right. The party has been hijacked, Jesse, by the extreme left, and yet people keep voting down the line on a Democratic ticket. It is awful. It's just absolutely awful. We have to take a break now. We'll be back in just a few moments with Jesse Garcia, chairman of the Suffolk County Republican Party and vice chairman of the state Republican Party, Erik Levin, our friend, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst. Healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, Erik Levin, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Gentlemen, I pose to you the following question. Why are we in this soup, this political governmental soup called Biden versus Trump for November? This is the election that the American people don't want. Now, why do I say that? Because both within the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, vast numbers, maybe even large majorities, don't want Trump as a Republican nominee, nor do they want Biden as a Democratic nominee. And overwhelmingly, independents don't want either of these two gentlemen. And yet, there we are. How did we get to this place? Jesse, you're the political leader. Tell me.
The way we got to this place is it was inevitable, quite frankly, despite the challenges that were coming from the left to from the Democratic Party to Biden. The power of his incumbency and the fact that he has controlled DNC allowed this to move forward. And on the Republican side, whether we like it or not, or you have disagreements with it or not, the movement that Donald Trump has established over the last 8 years is something that's taken root and continues to grow. We're going to get if people may be polling and saying that this is the election that they don't want, this is the election that we're going to have to deal with. And whether or not how we feel, the future of America, and we touched upon it a bit in the first segment, is really truly at stake here. So whether maybe some segments of it, whether it be 30% of this party, 40% of that party don't want their nominee, it's a binary choice. And the binary choice really truly comes down to in my generation, the greatest president, someone I look up to since I've been voting, Ronald Reagan. And it's a very simple question that Donald Trump should be posing. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And in every category, economically, public safety, our stance on the international stage, domestic security, national security, the border, in every case, we are far worse off today than we were under the Trump administration from 2016 to 2020. We may not like his mean tweets. We may not like the way he approaches things. We may not like the way that he calls out allies and enemies like we would maybe in a bar or we would around a kitchen table. It did get results. And one thing we can't argue with, gas price per gallon was around less than $2 a gallon. It's closer to 4. Inflation was hovering around 1%. It's now coming down, and they're taking credit for it, being down from 9% down to somewhere around 5 or 6%. We were respected and feared on the global stage, and we were energy independent, and our border was secure. We were stemming the tide of illegal migration here in the United States. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't maybe tactful, but it was effective. So in every category, the choice of the future of this country, whether you want freedom or you want a nanny state, you want big tech to control you, or you want your liberties. This is the election we're going to get. And if by any abject decision, the way you look at it, despite the attitudes, the Trump administration for Trump 47 is the way this country needs to go to get out of this malaise and out of this downward spiral.
Well, it's very funny because the next question I was going to ask you, gentlemen, which is, what is a better choice for America's future? I think you answered that question, Jesse. You jumped the gun on me, but I think...
I wanted to answer a question I wanted to answer.
Yeah, well, that's why I forget that you're a politician, of course. That's the first rule. Always answer the question you want to answer. Of course, I can see that. Very well done. I will hold my view for about 5 seconds. Okay, I've held it. I think the better choice for America is Donald Trump. I have no doubt it's a better choice. I think if we have another 4 years of the Democratic Party's radical left, ridiculous policy positions, domestically and foreign policy, national security, the border, energy, if that continues, this country will hit a downward spiral that will take generations and generations maybe to recover from. But you having jumped the gun, Jesse, and me having ratified you jumping the gun, I move to Erik. 2 questions, Erik. This is the election that American people don't want, and here we are. And who's the better choice? Your turn, Erik.
Well, thank you. Well, when Ronald Reagan asked that question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago, a very wise political pundit pointed out that's not really the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, how will you be in 4 years? Who projects a better future for you? And that's a tough question, but I've been giving it a lot of thought.
And by the way, I've tried to lobby him over the years, Jesse, but on this one, he's coming to this conclusion way on his own. Let the record be clear.
Let the record be very clear. So the question I'm asking myself is, who will be better for my grandchildren? And I have come to the conclusion, and I will explain it in a minute, that Donald Trump will be better for my grandchildren. Why? Because as an American Jew, I am beginning to worry. I have been worrying, and I continue to worry, and I get more and more worried every day about whether the golden age for Jews in America is coming to an end. will there be a place for my grandchildren if Joe Biden and progressives continue to have their way? And the answer to that is I don't think so. What is the progressive agenda? It's social justice, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, intersectionality, which are inherently racist and anti-Semitic. It's all about oppressor and oppressed. Whites are oppressors. Jews are whites. And Jews are the worst kinds of oppressors because they are colonial, occupying, apartheid supporters. They support the state of Israel, that white supremacist apartheid colonial settler state that commits genocide against people of color. Now, of course, these are all lies. These are all ahistorical. This is all nonsense. But that is the progressive agenda. That is the view of Jews by the progressive left when you get into this oppressor versus oppressed. The diversity, equity, and inclusion has infiltrated places of business, our schools, and while the college campuses are getting the most attention because of the explosion of anti-Semitism, these are Biden voters. These are not Donald Trump voters. These are Biden voters. And Joe Biden is not an anti-Semite, but he is bending American policy. He is bending his policies to appease Jew haters. And we see it in two ways. The easiest way, of course, to see it is his further distancing himself further and further every day from Israel and their existential war against Hamas. Joe Biden's record on Israel is abysmal. The recent abstention from vetoing the UN Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza without tying it
with no conditions,
without tying it to the release of the hostages, or any demands on Hamas, or even condemning Hamas, is disgusting. And why is he doing this? Because he wants his two-state solution is Michigan and Minnesota. He wants Rashida Tlaib's vote. He wants Ilhan Omar's vote. He wants the Squad's vote. He wants the Progressive Caucus vote. These are people who hate Israel. These are people who view Israel as evil. And some affirmatively want it destroyed. Others, if it gets destroyed, what can you do? So, and of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice, it's in our schools. In Chappaqua, where I live in Westchester County, they have a Middle East program called the Choice Program, teaching Middle East. That's the curriculum. It is a joint venture between Brown University and Qatar. One can only imagine what's being taught in those schools. There's a reason there's a huge spike in anti-Semitism in Chappaqua. In large part, it's because what the students are being taught. There's a big hullabaloo in Chappaqua over anti-Semitism. It's a horror show. It's in our places of business. Law firms, large law firms, talk about the 1619 Project. Talk about this need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's diversity in anything but thought. Equity, of course, this guaranteed equal outcome. That's the Soviet model. Equal opportunity is the American model. Inclusion is you're included if you agree with us, but one that's always excluded is the Jews. So while Joe Biden is not an anti-Semite, the policies he is implementing and the rhetoric he is employing is designed specifically to get the support of Jew haters. Jews are always at most peril in history when anti-Semitism is mainstreamed and becomes government policy. And that is currently what we are seeing from the left. And Joe Biden is giving it vitality. In contrast, Donald Trump's grandchildren are Orthodox Jews. There's a joke, I think I mentioned on the show last time, in the Jewish community. What's the difference between a Reform rabbi and Donald Trump? Donald Trump's grandchildren are Jewish. Ivanka, the apple of his eye, converted to Judaism and married Jared Kushner, an Orthodox Jew, and they're raising their children as proud Orthodox Jewish Americans. Donald Trump's closest advisor when he was president was Jared Kushner, an Orthodox Jew. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan. He withdrew from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. He caused the Abraham Accords to come about. And look, I have serious concerns about Donald Trump. I continue to believe that January 6th was an abomination. I think these continuing lies about a stolen election are very troubling. But the primary difference is, ironically, Donald Trump is treating all Americans equally. He doesn't single out a group of people. He just talks about, if you love me, that's great, but these are my views. He is not distinguishing between groups. Joe Biden is dividing America by race, ethnicity, and religion. He's the most divisive president in American history, and it's because he has adopted the progressive agenda of social justice. If that agenda becomes even more entrenched in our everyday lives, I am fearful that my grandchildren, God willing, will be Jewish, but I will love them no matter what, that there will be no place in America for my grandchildren. And if there is no place in America for my grandchildren, no other policy really matters. So on the question of whether or not America will be better served if Joe Biden is president or if Donald Trump is president, with some very serious reservations, I will vote for Donald Trump.
Jesse, could you believe that you and I have lived long enough to hear those golden words from Erik Levin?
I think our ratings just went through the roof. I think that
nobody's heard it yet.
We could probably bring peace to the Middle East, that we've accomplished this.
Well, it took Joe Biden and the progressive left. I'm telling you, they are one dangerous group of people.
I mean, Jesse and I can't take credit for this? Really?
Well, Jesse maybe. Jesse maybe.
So, Jesse,
Erik,
your thoughts?
Erik, you're absolutely right, though. And I'm glad, you touched me as you described about your grandchildren and the future of your grandchildren. And you went through the policies there, because I was flabbergasted. I was ashamed, quite frankly, when the United States at the UN Security Council abstained.
I was furious.
I mean, I was like, all my friends of the Jewish faith, me as an American, how could anyone now trust us when our closest ally in the Middle East, and really one of our top allies globally, we turned our back on them, and we turned our back on them. And you used the perfect description. There is a two-state solution for Joe Biden. It's Minnesota and Michigan. It's not what's best for America. It's what's best for progressive. It's what's best for the Democrats. It's what's best for him to hold on to power in what will be either a landslide election for Donald Trump, or, if they're up to their old dirty tricks, a close election for Donald Trump.
Well, it's far from certain that Donald Trump wins.
No, listen, I have to tell you, Jesse, we're going to have to conclude in a minute, but I just want to raise this issue because Erik just sponsored a lunch, and we had Senator Marco Rubio of Florida at the luncheon a couple of days ago, and it was a remarkable lunch. And as I was sitting there listening to Senator Rubio talk, and as you know, like you, a Cuban American, somebody who understands the dangers of a totalitarian communist regime and how it destroys people's lives, their freedoms, their opportunities, and their souls, their very being. But I sat there, and it's common sense understanding that this is a country that is under siege, is understanding that we're being subverted both internally and externally, is understanding that we have global threats from Iran, Russia, and China, is understanding that the Monroe Doctrine is being undermined and the threats that happens. It was wonderful to hear him say, and I said to myself, thank you that there's some people of common sense, which leads me to the conclusion that I keep coming back to, and this is Erik's point, it's more important than ever before in our lifetimes that we have a two-party system, and it's more important than ever before that at the very, very least, Jesse and Erik, that the Republicans win the United States Senate to have checks and balances and be a bulwark against the extremism that controls the Democratic Party and trying to foster their policies on us. We have to take that break. We'll be back in a minute. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party and Erik Levin, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a few moments.
This is Let the Record Show.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Are we still on the trail? Is this pack getting heavier? More switchbacks? Why am I doing this?
At REI Co-op, we believe there are places within ourselves.
Just a little further. You got this.
That we find only outside.
Wow. Look at the stars. This is incredible.
We have the gear, inspiration, and advice to help you get there. REI Co-op. Visit rei.com.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target's Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With us is our friend, esteemed attorney, essayist, and political commentator, Erik Levin. When we were off air just now on the break, we started talking about Bobby Kennedy Jr. running as a third-party candidate, which has the Democrats in absolute apoplexy. What are your thoughts on that, Jesse?
I think the Democrats are completely in scare mode of Donald Trump and anything that would be associated to assisting him. The Bobby Kennedy campaign, they see it. You can see the DNC has got their crisis management team, their the personal attack machine going on Bobby Kennedy, on RFK Jr., and they're now using their tools of litigation to try and knock him off the ballot. The problem they're going to have, though, is in many of our states that he is going to be campaigning and seeking to be the nominee of the already balloted Libertarian Party. Now, we don't have a Libertarian Party here in New York, so we'll have to petition to get on in some manner. But this is a death knell for them because except for the vaccine, which appeals to conservative voters and conservative unaffiliated voters, Bobby Kennedy is an ultra, left environmental Democrat that will seep away and give Democrats who are not happy with Joe Biden and his policies, or that he hasn't gone far enough to the left, which is why he's taking these positions now. That's a problem for them. But we've seen this all along. I honestly believe that for one reason or another, there is such fear over the Trump campaign and the possibility of a Trump presidency that the Democrats are utilizing every tool. They're using a weaponized judiciary to go after him in these 91 criminal cases. They're using it to try and knock him off the ballot. The Supreme Court did the right thing for the Constitution and this republic by knocking that down. They're going after him in other ways, trying to defame him, give him gag orders, and so on and so forth. And now, if they perceive something as a problem for them on their base, they're going after that. They're looking at it as a virus that they're trying to go after, because this is going to be a problem for them. And I think Bobby Kennedy is going to be a problem for them if he's on the ballot in key states, and is going to be the beneficiary of Donald Trump. So you can see that they're in full panic mode on all sides. They're almost getting to themselves in a point where they're going to be surrounded, and that's when they're going to be problematic.
Erik, what do you think?
If it's true, Bobby Kennedy is somewhat on the extreme, but I'm not sure if he's going to do as much damage to Biden as a lot of people think. The question is, who does he hurt more, Biden or Trump? I guess the conventional wisdom is that he hurts Biden, but because he's somewhat of a fringe candidate, he's kind of out there. There are fringes in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and it's difficult to know where everybody's going to go. So I guess if we go with the conventional wisdom, it hurts Democrats more than it hurts Trump. But I'm not 100% certain that's right.
All right, let me switch gears, gentlemen. I want to talk to you about Biden and Schumer selling out Israel. And, Erik has some very good points about what's going on with anti-Semitism and why he will now vote for Trump. But I want to suggest something else to you both. Whether you like Jews, you don't like Jews, whether you like Israel, you don't like Israel, Biden and Schumer selling out to save Israel is an important turning point for America and America's future.
It sells out the West.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Why does it matter? So you don't like Jews, and you don't like Israel, and you don't give a damn about the Middle East. Why is this so important, Erik?
We have to keep in mind the American-led world order, which has been in place since the end of World War II, which has given America unprecedented peace and prosperity. It's the reason we are the most successful nation in the history of the world. And right now, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are challenging the American-led world order and trying to replace it with a world order of tyrants. There are two fronts in that war right now. One is in Israel, one is in Ukraine. And the third front, which is currently starting but hasn't turned into a shooting war yet, is Taiwan. By selling out Israel, they are on the front line of the war. It is a clash of cultures. And by selling out Israel, we are selling out the West, because Israel is the tip of the spear in defending the American-led world order. Israel was attacked on October 7th by Iran. Hamas was the weapon of choice on that day. But all roads lead to Tehran. Iran is trying to dominate the region. The only thing that stops Iran from taking over the Middle East, literally from Morocco to the Red Sea, is Israel and America if we choose to engage. By weakening Israel, we empower Iran. That is one of the Axis countries that is challenging the American-led world order. Look what the Houthis are doing. Free navigation, commercial shipping around the world is critical to the American-led world order. It's critical to our economy. Yet a bunch of people who live in the 5th century have a couple of modern rockets, and they are shutting down the shipping through the Red Sea. It forces ships to go around the Horn of Africa, increasing prices exponentially. Typically, a ship that's going to go from an eastern port in eastern United States, assuming Baltimore's ever open again, going from a port in the eastern United States to India or the Far East, goes through the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal into the Red Sea. They're not doing that route anymore. It's far more costly. And what does it also do? The Suez Canal is the primary source of income for Egypt. Egypt is being starved because nobody is using the Suez Canal anymore. They're going around the Horn of Africa. So when you have a bunch of 5th century lunatics dressed up as sand people running around in Yemen, can shut down commercial shipping around the globe. And the United States only takes defensive actions because it's worried about offending Iran and escalation in the Middle East. And things only get worse and worse. You know you're in trouble. So the betrayal of Israel and a lack of full-throated support for Israel and an all-in approach militarily in providing Israel with everything they need and all the encouragement they need and giving them all the political cover they need in the UN and around the globe is a sellout of not just Israel, but of the West, because it empowers Iran. And when you empower Iran, you empower Russia. And when you empower Iran and Russia, you empower China, our number one greatest threat. So Joe Biden has decided to put that all on the back burner just so he can carry the states of Michigan and Minnesota. And he's more interested in appeasing Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and the squad than he is in defending America.
Jesse.
On this show, week after week, I had feared and expressed that fear to our listeners that our national policy was going to be driven by domestic politics. And what Erik just said and what we've been discussing on the global scale with our allies in Israel and what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Ukraine, and what is percolating in Taiwan with China is a direct result of that. And I am not sure how far that goes or if it can be brought back with the new administration about 8 months away, hopefully, by the grace of God. This is, I never thought I would see American elected leaders sell out Israel. First, we saw it.
Including Chuck Schumer. Including Chuck Schumer.
And that's where I was getting to. Chuck Schumer, the week before the vote on Israel, before the Security Council on the ceasefire with no strings attached or hostages to be returned to Israel.
Or condemnation of Hamas. There was
or
no
condemnation of Hamas, of anything. It was like no strings attached. It was just a straight appeasement for Hamas and Iran, two enemies of the United States and all freedom countries. He wanted to throw that region into chaos for political purposes by calling for new elections. There's a war council going on, and even the adversaries domestically in Israel are working together. Whether it may be difficult or not, I'm not sure. And I don't take the words of those written in news accounts as for it. I believe that they're patriots and they're going to protect their country and their nation and their people first before they get involved in politics. But Schumer should not have ever interjected the politics into that region. Because what you're going to do is sow discontent, doubt into the Israeli leadership. And right now, they need nothing more but support and a bond. It was followed. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just make 2 points on that.
Sure.
Part of what the Biden administration fundamentally fails to understand is Israel is going to go into Rafah, no matter what the UN Security Council says. It is an existential threat. Hamas cannot stay in Gaza.
Exactly.
They're going to come back. They've said they're going to come back, and they're going to repeat October 7th as frequently as they can. Israel is going to go into Rafah. And when they do, of course, then it's a finger in the eye of Biden, who said stay out. He's going to be humiliated. But Israel exists. Israel exists, and I can't overemphasize this enough, is to make sure that the destiny and future of the Jewish people is in the hands of the Jewish people. The last century taught Israelis that the Western indifference towards Jews during the Holocaust taught Israelis that it is ultimately up to them. And they don't care who Ilhan Omar votes for. They don't care who Rashida Tlaib votes for. They don't care who AOC votes for. And they don't care how much Joe Biden begs for their vote. Nor do they care about Chuck Schumer. Why is Chuck Schumer doing this? Aside from sucking up to Biden. Chuck Schumer wants to remain majority leader of the Senate. He needs Michigan. Remember, that's an open seat. If the Senate goes to Mike Rogers, if Mike Rogers wins, the Republican takes the Senate. Chuck Schumer is no longer the majority leader. So he is prepared to sell out Israel. He's prepared to sell out his country. He'll sell out anyone. He does not care. He has no moral compass. He has no ethical core. Only because for power. He wants to be majority leader. So you couple this idea that Israel is going to defend itself no matter what anyone says. And Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are wedded to being reelected no matter what anyone says. This is a train wreck in the making when you consider the American-Israeli relationship. It is in for some really rough, bumpy waters, particularly if Joe Biden is reelected, which gets back to my original point on the show, that ultimately the America's interest, my grandchildren's interest, are going to be better served if Donald Trump's president.
Well, Senator Rubio made a good point to us the other day at lunch, Eric, in which he said, it's not a question of if, but when. And it's going to happen pretty soon. I think he predicted June and July. Israel is going to have to go after Hezbollah, which is
in the north, in
north,
Lebanon.
Because, Jesse and Eric, Senator Rubio is absolutely correct. They displaced over 100,000 Israelis from their homes by continuing shelling. And it's little mini Cold War. Not so cold when you have shelling coming at you.
That's the
from Hezbollah.
That's the equivalent of displacing 3.5 million Americans.
This is a very big deal.
Million. What would the United States response be if Canada or Mexico caused 3.5 million Americans to flee their homes?
So what Biden has done, Jesse and Eric, in his foolishness, and Schumer has done, they're only guaranteeing two things. One, this war is going to last longer because Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah and the Houthis are emboldened.
Sure enough, right after that resolution, the Security Council resolution was passed, Hamas backed out of the hostage deal.
Yeah, so these guys are emboldened, which means the war is going to continue with more casualties, and it means that Israel may have to go it alone. And if Israel has to go it alone and their back is being driven into the sea, do not believe that these people are going to go willingly and quietly into the extermination chambers.
They tried that in the last century. It didn't work out well.
So the fact is, this is very serious. It's going to be a longer war, and it's going to be a broadened war. And if there's a broadened war, you can be sure, whether we like it or not, the United States is going to have to be involved. Let's switch gears. I want to raise this issue that's been bothering me. We have about 5 minutes to go. It's been bothering me enormously. It's the Green New Deal obsession in America. I mean, I just can't get over what is wrong with us. Why is this such a danger to America? Well, to me, it's very simple. You're denying people freedom of choice, so you're destroying a capitalist system for government mandates, which is statism, which never works, because public policy planners who tell people how to consume and how to live ultimately fail because they're going against freedom of choice, and people's choices and their own basic human nature matter to them. They want what they want. All right, that's number one. Number two, the costs of this are enormous. Number three, the infrastructure is not in place. Number four, a lot of this stuff is dangerous. Electric cars, and they want to have it on trucks and ambulances and school buses. These are dangerous. When the fires start, they can't be put out safely, and you have all kinds of toxic fumes. And then they spontaneously regenerate, and it could be days or weeks or months later with a spontaneous regeneration of the fire. They don't have the infrastructure to support it. They don't have the minerals and the natural resources to support it. It's destroying the American automobile industry. And now they're going after your gas stoves, your lawnmowers, your refrigerators, your air conditioning. Give me a break. And this is the party of freedom of choice, of so-called democracy. What is wrong with these people? Jesse.
These are people who used science to shove vaccines down our throats and lockdowns in our lives and take away our freedoms and liberty. But when it comes to science and electric vehicles and the Green New Deal, all of a sudden the soundbite and the political points take precedence over science. We've railed against the Green New Deal. We've railed about the stupidity of it, its effectiveness. It's ludicrous that they are actually engaging in this. There is a role for reusables, energy sources. But first, before you get there, let's make sure that the science backs it up. That's number one. Number two, you can't just do it by mandating it because of an arbitrary date on the calendar that helps your election. And that's what the Democrats are doing, or to hurt another industry. We shouldn't say you can't build new construction with natural gas anymore because of the Green New Deal, or force car companies not to sell fossil fuel vehicles anymore. How about we get the pipeline going, become energy independent in the United States again, like we were under the Trump administration, and then methodically, systematically, with testing and science, move towards a more balanced approach to energy and the protection of our environment. Besides, if we maintain and we jumped back into all these crazy Green New Deals and international accords like the Democrats put us in, the fact that India and China are not partners of it, it would not make a difference. And whether or not the United States is in it or not in it, the impact is negligible. But what is impactful is upon our economy and our middle class.
And what about national security?
And national security, with the fact that we are not energy independent. And now we have to depend upon Venezuela and other enemies of the United States for our raw materials, our goods, and, of course, our power.
Final word, Erik.
Yeah, it always strikes me as bizarre. You can drill anywhere in the world except in the United States. You have some of the dirtiest oil in the world coming out of Venezuela, but we're going to go to an indicted narco-terrorist, Maduro, and ask him for oil. Look, this has nothing to do with stemming climate change. There is climate change. Let's accept that. There is. But the question is there a climate crisis? And if there is, how do you deal with it? You don't sell your house and then leave unless you got someplace to go. It may be wonderful to have all these renewables, but they're not viable right now. And it may be something to work towards, but it's not viable right now. Even John Kerry, someone I hold in the lowest possible regard, said of the Paris Climate Accords that it will accomplish nothing because China, India, and the developing world want nothing to do with it. China builds 2 coal-fired plants a week. They're emitting more carbon than ever before in record numbers. India has no interest because India has over 1 billion people to feed. They need inexpensive energy that only oil can provide. So, and the developing world, same thing. So what is the goal here? This is all about a takeover of the American energy sector. Obamacare was about a takeover of the medical sector of the economy. This is about a takeover of the energy sector of the economy. And the way you know that best is that there are solutions like nuclear energy and natural gas and fracking, which has little or no carbon footprint. Those aren't green, according to the climate warriors. Why? Because they are solutions. If you have a solution, you don't need government intervention. This is all about government control.
Well, Jesse, Erik, another great show. I want to thank you both. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney Erik Levin. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.